guys, Dr. Rob Barrington here with some more nutrition advice. Now, I get a lot of feedback on my videos from people that think that dietary supplements are not particularly useful, and there is a school of thought amongst people that dietary supplements are a waste of money and you can get all of the nutrients that you need in food. Now, I don't subscribe to that opinion. I think there's a lot of evidence in the nutritional literature that dietary supplements are beneficial and they do have a place in a healthy diet. But they are supplements. They are not things that should be taken in place of a healthy diet. They are adjuncts. They are supplements to what should already be, the daily consumption of healthy, high-quality foods. So I kind of sit in the middle in this argument, and I think that there is a place for dietary supplements, and I do think there's a lot of evidence that shows that people who do take dietary supplements have show improvements in their health. And it came across a very interesting research paper that just nicely illustrates this. So I wanted to do a quick video just so I can refer people who have that opinion to this video to show them that there is evidence that even modest amounts of dietary supplements can have a place in improving your health. The study was actually a study that looked at the association between the inflammatory content of the diet and the risk of mortality from cancer and cardiovascular disease. Effectively, what the researchers did is they followed a large group of people for a large number of years. It was almost 10 years. And what they did is they analysed the diets of these individuals, and they used something called a dietary inflammation index. And this was a validated way that has been previously validated in other research. This was a way to show how inflammatory the diets of these individuals were. Now, inflammation is one of the problems with the Western diet. Many of the foods in the Western diet have pro-inflammatory effects, and this relates to the foods within the diet. In particular, there is there's high amounts of omega-6 fats, there's low amounts of omega-3 fats, there are lots of metabolic poisons, there's high amounts of sugar. Taken together, these components have a cumulative effect on inflammation. And this a previous study had validated diets, and it looked at diets, and it had come to a number of parameters within a diet that can be isolated to determine whether a diet is pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. And the researchers used this study, and they used this dietary inflammatory index to be able to assess the diets of the individuals over this almost 10-year period. And what they found is that those subjects in this study over this period of time that had pro-inflammatory diets, who had foods within their diet that would cause inflammation, they had a significantly increased risk of dying in that period from either cancer or cardiovascular disease. So the pro-inflammatory diets increased their risk of mortality from those two Western lifestyle diseases. And that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's been following my channel, or indeed anyone that's been reading about nutrition and looking into nutrition and researching the topic, because inflammation is a root cause of most Western lifestyle diseases. If you go and buy a book on free radical chemistry that is related to nutrition, you will see that most of the Western lifestyle diseases, cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, all the common ones, including obesity, they all have this association with an underlying inflammatory condition. Now, the etiology of this is very complex, but generally, inflammation leads to the generation of free radicals. The inflammatory pathways that we have in our cells and our tissues, as a result of these pathways, there is the generation of excess free radicals. Now, in the short term, inflammation is beneficial. We have inflammation to be able to protect us from tissue injuries in the short term. And that generation of free radicals, although it can be damaging to individual cells, in the short term it doesn't really have negative effects, because we have cellular mechanisms to cope with it. We have the ability to, our cells have the ability to be able to mop up excess free radicals. We have substances such as glutathione in our cells, and this along with other dietary components such as vitamin C and vitamin E, these components are really there to stop the damage to the cells from the generation of free radicals. But these systems are not really designed to work over the long term with excessive amounts of free radical generation. They're there in the short term to protect the cells from acute injury, from high amounts of free radicals produced in the short term, or for low amounts over the long term. What they're not there really designed to do is to protect the cells over the long term from high amounts of oxidative stress, which is which is what would happen if you were consuming one of these pro-inflammatory diets for a long period of time. You get excessive amounts of free radicals produced. This would cause oxidative stress, and eventually the cells would just become depleted of antioxidants. And this is what ultimately would happen as the antioxidant defenses get worn down. The antioxidants get used up, but they're not replaced at a fast enough rate. Eventually those free radicals would start to damage the cells, they'd start to damage the tissues, they start to damage the DNA. That could lead to the generation of cancer. They start to damage the walls of arteries, for example. That leads to endothelial dysfunction and cardiovascular disease. So it's well characterized how inflammation can cause Western lifestyle disease, and this is through a generation of free radicals. So the interesting thing about this paper was not that they found that inflammation led to an increase in cancer and cardiovascular disease mortality. That was really expected from if you anyone that's been reading about nutrition and looking into the the scientific literature, that was really expected. It's been shown many times before that is the case. The interesting thing about this study was that they gave half of these people a placebo tablet, which was obviously contained nothing, and they gave the other half of the people involved in this study an antioxidant supplement. Now, I'll bring up the content of the antioxidant supplement because it's interesting and it's relevant to the results of this study. But if we have a look at what was actually in this supplement, it was actually a very modest amount of antioxidants. 120 milligrams of ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, 30 milligrams of vitamin E, which is not a particularly high amount of vitamin E, and it doesn't say whether that vitamin E is in the natural D-alpha tocopherol form or the synthetic D-L-alpha tocopherol form, but I would suggest that it was alpha tocopherol. Most of these types of basic supplements with small amounts of antioxidants, they would very likely have just alpha tocopherol in them, and I would suggest that if you looked into it, you would probably find that this was actually the synthetic form, which was DL-alpha tocopherol. So not the best form of vitamin E, but that's my my supposition from this. I don't know. There was 6 milligrams of beta carotene, and again I would suggest that would be the synthetic form of beta carotene, not the natural form, which may have implications for how effective it is. And it is a single carotenoid. It's not a carotenoid that is, for example, mixed carotenoids. Mixed vitamin E and mixed carotenoids are highly, much more effective than these individual compounds. There's 100 micrograms of selenium, which is again not a huge amount, but it's more than most people get in their diet. It doesn't say what form of selenium again, so that's difficult to infer. It could be in the form of something inorganic like selenite or selenate, or it could have been an organic selenium compound, but it doesn't say. And there's 20 milligrams of zinc again. It doesn't say whether that zinc is in the an amino acid chelated zinc, or is it a less absorbable form? But those are very modest amounts of nutrients. They're certainly less than you may expect to get in certain multivitamins, and they would certainly be less than you would get if you bought those antioxidants individually as tablets. So quite modest amounts of antioxidants. And possibly not the best forms of those antioxidants. So this was, as a supplement goes, it did contain, there were antioxidant nutrients in there and minerals that are related to antioxidants. Selenium, of course, is able to act as a cofactor in the glutathione peroxidase enzyme, which is a cellular antioxidant, and zinc is part of the superoxide dismutase enzyme system. It acts as a cofactor for that enzyme. And this is why those two minerals are seen as antioxidant minerals. So half of the population of this study took this antioxidant nutrient, and the other half took the placebo. Now, what was interesting about this study was that the association between the dietary inflammatory index and the increased risk of cardiovascular and cancer mortality was only present in those subjects that were taking the placebo. Those subjects that took the antioxidant nutrient, there was no association between dietary inflammation and the mortality from cancer and cardiovascular disease. And what that tells us is that the antioxidant supplement had a modifying effect on this association. And very likely what happened is that the inflammation that was caused by the diet, all of these people were consuming various diets, but the association was measured in everybody. And what obviously happened was that the modifying effect of this antioxidant nutrient was to nullify the damaging effect of the inflammatory diet. In other words, those people in the supplement group that were consuming an inflammatory diet, those people that were consuming a diet that was high on the inflammatory index, they didn't have an increased risk of mortality from cancer and cardiovascular disease, and very likely because the extra antioxidants they were taking in the form of this antioxidant nutrient were able to quench the free radicals that were produced as a result of the inflammation, and this therefore would have bolstered their own cellular defenses. It would have provided an external source of nutrients, of antioxidants, to be able to prevent oxidative stress, to be able to prevent this long-term chronic high production of oxidative stress. And this is supported, this contention is supported by lots of evidence that antioxidant nutrients work in this way, and it was probably beneficial that this antioxidant supplement contained different antioxidants, because antioxidants tend to work in synergistic ways. If it had just contained vitamin C, maybe there wouldn't have been an effect. If it had just contained beta carotene, maybe there wouldn't have been an effect. But when you start mixing antioxidant nutrients together, you need much lower levels of them than you would if you had taken a single compound, because of this synergism. And vitamin C is a water-soluble antioxidant. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant. The carotenoids are fat-soluble, and selenium and zinc, the enzymes, are found in the water-soluble component of the cells. So there's a mix of water-soluble and fat-soluble antioxidants there, and it's that mix of the antioxidants that may have made this, quite modest supplement actually reasonably effective at modifying this association between inflammation and disease. Now, I have a couple of caveats for this research. Firstly, this doesn't prove that supplements are better than diet. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this proves that supplements do have a place. They do have an effect. Many people actually, message me and say, I think supplements are actually detrimental. They have these, such and such effects. This just proves that there is evidence out there that taking even modest amounts of dietary supplements can be beneficial for certain people. Now, my caveat, as always with all my videos, is that you should really get as many of your nutrients as you can from your diet. your diet is always the first port of call that you should try and get nutrients from. However, selenium is very difficult to find in foods. There are a limited amount of foods that contain selenium, and it's very difficult to eat them every day and get a daily source of selenium. So taking a supplement of selenium makes sense. Zinc, again, many studies have analysed foods. They've analysed the diets of individuals and the intakes of zinc, and many people are deficient in zinc because our foods are devoid of zinc. Taking a zinc supplement as part of a multivitamin or as an individual supplement would therefore make sense. This makes more sense for people who are very physically active, who have much higher requirements for these nutrients. Many people who are, athletes that train at a very high level, they simply can't get the amount of nutrients they require for their metabolic activity from the food because they have such a high requirement. Their metabolic rate is so much higher, their turnover of tissues is so much higher, their excretion rate of these vitamins and minerals is so much higher. So it's very difficult for them actually to eat the foods that contain enough of these antioxidant nutrients and these vitamins and minerals. So again, supplements make sense for that type of individual. And then we have individual biochemical individuality. Certain people have a very high requirement for no other reason than their genetics dictate that, and therefore these people may require higher levels of nutrients. So supplements have a place. But you should always try and get as many nutrients as you can in your diet, and that relates particularly for antioxidants. And the diet is actually a very good place to get antioxidants. Many foods contain much higher levels of antioxidants than you would get in supplements. Green tea, for example, I've done videos before on comparisons of the amount of catechins that you can get in drinking green tea with the amount that you would get from supplements, and it's much easier to get catechins from drinking green tea, much higher concentrations than it is from taking supplements. Not only cheaper, it's also much more efficient. A cup of green tea contains a vast amount of catechins compared to a capsule of green tea. And there are many examples of this. Foods are very rich in antioxidants, and the other thing about foods is they contain multiple different types of antioxidants, which goes back to the synergistic effects. If you take beta carotene, you get beta carotene. That's what you would get in your supplement. Certain supplements do contain mixed carotenoids, but they tend to contain limited amounts of maybe 4 carotenoids mixed together. If you eat a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, those vegetables, many of them are going to contain carotenoids, and they will contain not only higher amounts of carotenoids than you could get for a supplement, but they will contain a wider range of carotenoids as well, and that provides additional benefits. The same with vitamin E. Vitamin E containing foods contain a range of different vitamin E compounds. Vitamin E supplements very often just contain alpha tocopherol. And there are many different phytonutrient antioxidants in plants. Many of them haven't even been identified. They're being characterized all the time. And all of these antioxidants work synergistically together. So the synergism that likely happened in this very modest supplement is magnified to a much greater extent when you consider diet. So that's really the caveat about this. It's not this isn't a video to prove, and I don't want people to misquote me on this. This isn't a video to prove that supplements are better than diet. This isn't a video to show evidence that people should take this particular type of dietary supplement. What this video is really trying to do is just illustrate that some people can benefit from taking a dietary supplement. Clearly, half of these individuals had a reduced rate of cancer mortality and cardiovascular mortality from taking a very simple, very modest, very cheap, a small dietary supplement containing a small amount of nutrients, and that can't be a bad thing. Clearly, yes, I would encourage these people to reduce the inflammatory index of their diets, to actually decrease the amount of inflammation that was being caused from their diets. That would have very likely increased their health much more significantly than taking this antioxidant nutrient. But it does provide evidence that even modest amounts of antioxidant nutrients can be beneficial in certain people, and therefore they are a consideration, and certainly they are of interest to people who are interested in nutrition, even if just for for information purposes. So I'm putting this video out there. I'll put the link to the paper as always, as I always do, in the comments box below this video, and then you can read it yourself. And this is just one example of of many studies out there that have looked at antioxidant nutrients and how they have beneficial effects in humans and animals and in cell culture models, and there is a lot of evidence. So don't let people tell you that there isn't evidence that supplements work. There was actually an article in the New Scientist recently that went through a number of nutrients, and their conclusion was there was no evidence that a lot of these nutrients have effects, and really it was pseudoscience. It's not based on anything to do with looking in the literature. It's just somebody's opinion. They have something against supplements, some kind of agenda, so they publish that information. But that's not reflective of the actual scientific literature and the the observable, repeatable science that has been done on the benefits of these types of nutrients, which clearly show in certain people they do have health benefits. At least that's the way I see it. That's my opinion, so you can make up your own mind. So as always, eat well, stay healthy, and protect yourself, and I will see you soon for another video. And in the meantime, please take care.